Hello everyone, this is In-Game Arts with Digital Boxing, another offline product game review. This is River City Girls 1 and 2 for the PlayStation 4. To jump right into it, this physical copy here comes with 2 games on one disc. It comes with River City Girls 1 and River City Girls 2. Now each game is treated as its own individual piece, so once you pop the game in, you get to pick and choose which one you want to install onto your hard drive, which is extremely nice in case you're working with limited hard drive space or you're only interested in playing one of the 2 games. Now, if you've probably noticed, this is the Japan physical copy, but this copy does support full English voice acting and menus, so it's extremely nice. But why I chose this one is that this is the only way to get the most updated version of River City Girls 1 on disc. The physical copy of River City Girls 1 comes with the update version 1.20 already on the disc, as well as at the time of this video, there were no updates available. But sadly, River City Girls 2 is just a base vanilla version of the game, and it had a 2.1 gigabyte update that will take you to version 1.02 since the time of this video. Now, like always, I play all my games completely offline with an unregistered account, and though my experience didn't have any issues or problems, I may have gotten lucky about that, but for the most part, I completed the entire game with little to no problems, and I was still unlocking trophies for 1 and 2. Now, I'm going to go a little bit more detail, so please try to stay with me and bear with me on this a little bit, but if you don't know, there is a limited run physical copy version of River City Girls 1 and 2, and, well, they're standalone physical copies. Well, limited run physical copy is an outdated version. This is the only way you can get the first game, at least from my knowing, of getting the most updated version of the first River City Girls game. And for the most part, the game ran perfectly fine. They updated, they fixed some little minor issues. The only biggest issue I had with the first game was their voice audio. Some English voice acting seems to have some audio problems where they're like peeking out and they get a little bit distorted sounding, and it's plagued throughout the entire game of this issue. While you'll notice it when you play the second game, that audio problem is not present in the second game. So that's why you can tell that there's an audio issue in the first game. But the first game runs perfectly fine, and I had next to no problems whatsoever, and the game ran at a steady 60 frames per second. It was a decent and well-made brawler, beat-em-up kind of style game. Good voice acting, other than the audio problem. The story is kooky and wacky and silly, and very just stylized, and the music's really good, and the overall aesthetic of the game was very pleasant to play, and the overall mechanics of the game was really good to play. The progression system of slowly leveling up, buying abilities, and getting more items to feed yourself to get life, as well as getting more experience from that food item and equipping accessories, as well as I did play a little bit of the first game with my brother on 2 players, and we both had a generally good laugh out of our little enjoyment of that game. Well, that is completely about the first game. We're going to go ahead and talk for a little bit about the second game, and the second game has a slew of problems. The first thing you're going to immediately notice about the second game is that it runs at 30 frames per second, while the first game runs at 60 frames per second. Now, I am not a frame rate person. I'm not a person who's going to go out around and say that 30 frames is garbage and then it leaves the game unplayable. But it is disorienting considering when you come from the first game at a steady 60 and then you jump to the second game at a steady 30. It's very annoying and disorienting when it happens, and there's really no reason for this because, as I said, the first game runs perfectly fine at 60 while the second game has literally nothing different about the game. So it's really weird that they chose a steady 30 with the game. I have no idea what made them choose to go that route with the game. But I do want to point out, in case anybody asks, I did update the game with that 2.1 gigabyte update, and it does not include a frame rate increase. It's still 30 frames per second on console, even with that update. So I checked that, and then there's just that issue. So you're locked at 30 on the second game. Now, moving more on to the second game, I did have some getting stuck issues where I was sometimes getting stuck when somebody hit me and I flew into the wall or flew into an object or even flew into another enemy, and then I got stuck in a falling animation or flying animation into that object. Most times the enemy was able to knock me out of it, but it was one time I got completely stuck and I had to just save and quit and reload the game. Now, one of the things I want to point out that I got lucky on, and is through my research about the 60 frames per second problem, is that there is a bug in the game if you don't update the game that where you will get side quests, and if you decline any of these side quests, some of them will be hard locked out. So once you decline it, you will never be able to approach that person again to be able to continue that side quest. And some of them, from my memory, are crucial. So every side quest that pops up, just accept it. There's literally no reason to decline a side quest. I don't even know why they provide that option where you can just choose not to do the side quest. So just make sure if you're playing completely with the vanilla version of the second game, just accept every side quest. And sadly, one of my complaints is the side quests are not very good. Most of them are just fetch quests. They go gather so many items, go do this multiple times, go capture a bunch of cats or something like that. Not interesting at all. As well as I want to point out, the second game totes that it supports 4 players. This is not true. The game supports 2 players on disc, but you need to update the game if you want to play 4 players offline. So again, very disappointed on that. I mean, the 2 players still works perfectly fine on the second game. Me and my brother messed around a little bit on it, but we ended the day enjoyed the first one more because of the other issue I'm going to point out, is that every time you move into a next transition scene, the game has a loading second. And it's only a few seconds, but every single section you load into, you're going to have a constant screen popping up there. Loading, please wait. I mean, it was so irritating to constantly playing this little miniature open world kind of setup they did with the second one. Constantly seeing in this, I don't know, maybe 5-6 second thing. Please wait, loading. It's just, it was really, really irritating. In my personal opinion, the second one, while the continuation of the story was really good, the overall design of the game fell flat. I did not like the open world design they went with. The loading screen was an issue, as well as that main side quests were not that interesting. But the main story was still good. The characters were still good. The combat was still good. And the stylization, the music was all still good. But the first game is really refined and well made. While the second game, it's got its problems. Near the end, I wasn't really having much fun. I was just really wanting to be over with it. And I do admit, the second game feels way more like they wanted you to play multiplayer more than the first game. The second game, I actually legitimately felt a little lonely when I first played it through one player. It just felt like this game was, the second one was more designed to playing with more people, or at least another person. But that's about it. Boss fights weren't as good in the second game as well. There was a lot of platforming in the second one, which the controls in this game is not, a brawler in general is not really made for jumping platforming. So I don't know what possessed them again to some of the design points of the second one was just really questionable. It's really disappointing because the game's story, the stylization, the gameplay, the characters, all of it is really good. And the sprite graphics are amazing. It's just some very questionable design points, and I can't help but feel it's another one of the games that's a victim of the parasite that is huge open world, or everything has to be open world, and it pulls a lot of the resource and times and mechanics that could be focused on, making a better game than making an empty world to run around, which River City Girls 2 is a lot of empty world to run around and just trying to avoid enemies to get to the next section. Again, I know this is mostly a rant about the second game, and that is because it's not as good as the first one. I highly, highly recommend the first game, especially with this collection. You can have the most updated version of the game of the first one. The second one, man, there's a lot of things that needs to be improved. It shows a lot of signs of just trying to be rushed out the door, and just, again, parasite of the huge open world design, trying to infest other games that just doesn't need it. And it's just disappointing because there's a lot of good things about this collection. It's still worth a pickup, in my opinion, because the first game is most updated and it's still a fun multiplayer game, and you could still get some enjoyment out of the second one playing split 2 players offline with a brother or friend or loved one, family, whichever. It's still an enjoyable game. It's just this collection could have been so much better if the second one was probably more updated. The 60 frames issue would have been fixed. Then just other design aspects were an issue about the second game. But in my opinion, it's still worth a pickup just for the first game. Lots of fun, most updated version, full English menus and voice acting and stuff. I'm not the biggest in beat 'em ups, but this game was still very stylized, very unique in its mechanics and just ideas and just the overall music and the universe they built up, and just how the first one and the second one is basically a continuation of the story, and the reasons behind the story is really good. It's a great games, but man, the second one is held back immensely by just certain design points and ideas. So like always, thank you all so much for watching. That's summarized about the entire problem. I'll go over it again since it was a lot. The first game only had audio issues, and that was about it. Everything else ran great, 60 frames per second. The second game was 30 frames per second for no reason. I was falling and getting smacked and getting stuck. Boss fights had a lot of platforming issues. The loading screen, please wait, was an issue. Side quests weren't interesting in the second one. No 4-player mode offline. You have to update your game. And even if you update your game, it does not unlock the frame rate. You're still locked at 30. That's all for the second game. So again, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful to you for your physical collecting and just your offline experience. So as always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next unboxing video.